The following programming is sponsored by the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media Group.
Sorry, I just realized what I did. You guys are pro-life now. All right, for realsies this time.
Wait.
The following programming is sponsored by Tom Toole III. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media Group.
Happy October. Welcome to Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. She's Sarah Tymon. She's Stacey Mitchell. I'm Tom Toole. And again, we work with the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Mainline, the number one RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania and Delaware since 2018, selling residential real estate. And ladies, we have got an international crisis going on. We're going to talk about it in a second. If you want to email the show, it's info@tooletimeradio.com. And you can check out our stream on Facebook or on YouTube. Just search Tom Toole Sales Group. That's Toole with an E. So we're going international here today. The Evergrande crisis in China has been going on for years. And a lot of people don't know about it. I mean, this is something that I found is very underpublicized. So the short of the Evergrande crisis, and this is what real estate agents should know. It's the second largest property developer in China, and they are in a bad financial spot. Everyone's watching. The government might bail them out, and they're saddled with $300 billion with a B dollars in debt. To give you some perspective on what this company has developed, they have 1,300 developments. They've developed 280 cities. So actual cities, not like a borough or a town or a subdivision, cities in China. And what happened earlier in September is that they came out and they said they were struggling to sell property fast enough to make payments on the $300 billion in bonds that they've taken out. And it's put a huge strain on the company's cash flow. And now the government's getting involved, and they've had to take high interest loans out from employees. They've stopped paying them. This is a disaster. This is not good. What do you guys think about this?
Well, it's been years in the making. I've heard about this. We were just talking before the show, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't know the name of the company, but that they were constructing these like massive, almost city-like communities built around shopping centers and housing, and they were basically sitting empty. They were ghost towns.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of eerie because they were beautiful and monstrosities of these communities and just ghost towns and decaying pretty rapidly. So, but I when this came up today, as we're talking about it, it has been years in the making. So for them just to, be shocked that they can't make their interest payments all of a sudden. What I believe, though, is that the government of China will bail them out. I think there's definitely going to be a bailout because it's going to be too monumental, not only for their country, but for the global markets as a whole. And just coming off, or coming out, just trying to come out of a pandemic, we don't really know the real conditions of the effects of the pandemic on China anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the government is going to have to do some type of, financial intervention to keep them whole for the most part, to keep their economy going. So that's my opinion there.
Well, it's already drawn comparisons to Lehman Brothers in 2008. So I think that's a really good analysis and observation on your part, Stacey. And what we know is that China's structured a lot differently. They don't have these independent banks like we do. The banks are regulated by the country. So it does look like they're going to get bailed out here. I mean, Sarah, what do you think about all this? Because I mean, this is just massive debt that's going to get defaulted on. And this is the second largest developer in China. And in 2018, they were considered the most valuable real estate company in the world. So I don't know how this happens.
Right. I mean, it seems like they were probably kept digging in deeper and deeper. And before they know it, before they knew it, they were realized they had a pretty big problem on their hands. How it got to this point, you'd think they would have kind of seen this coming a little bit. I do think that China will bail them out, but I think they were trying to set a precedent of not, just I don't want to say blindly supporting, but investing a lot to bail out some of these bigger corporations. And with this one being so large, though, and the number of employees, because they have their hands really in a lot of different areas. So I mean, the real estate market in and of itself is massive, but there's a lot of other pieces to this puzzle, and a lot of other areas that it would certainly affect. So I think with all of that, they're going to have to intervene to do something to keep it to kind of stop the bleeding a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it is. That's a great point. It's not just a real estate company. I mean, that they manufacture electric cars. They manufacture and distribute bottled water. I mean, this is a conglomerate. I mean, in every sense of the word. And the frightening thing here is that real estate and related industries in China are about 30% of the GDP. In the U.S., it's only about 17%. So you're looking at almost double. So the impact is going to be potentially double of the crash that we saw in 2008. And they already missed, they already missed one deadline. They failed to address another. So, and then this is like paying your bills. They had an interest payment of nearly 84 million that was due a couple weeks ago and that they just missed. And they're supposed to make another payment, and they don't have the money. And it looks like a lot of this was, to your point, Stacey, they overestimated the demand for properties because they primarily work with like middle and upper class apartment purchasers to buy these places, and the places are vacant. I mean, they're not selling them. So when you build that much and overimprove that much, and then nobody's buying it, I mean, all your money's tied up in this real estate, which because it looks like they were building too fast and overestimating demand. So it's going to be a problem. And what I'm concerned about is, I think the positive here is that it looks like they are too big to fail. Like there's no question there. So it looks like the government's going to bail them out. I'm more concerned with what does this mean after that? Like, I mean, what are going to be the ramifications here? Because there's there's Wall Street companies that are exposed that invest in this company. The government obviously has an issue. What's going to happen with these buildings? I mean, there was a video I saw a couple weeks ago where they knocked down, like literally just like blew up and demolished 12 of the apartment towers because nobody was living in them.
Wow.
And then you got to deal with like all the maintenance and everything else. I mean, think about that. A vacant building that big. I mean, these are high rises here. And I mean, the fact that they built it, and I mean, they might as well just blown up the money and not done all the work. And it's a little, I mean, this is a serious thing that not enough people are talking about. So how do you guys think this affects the market here? I mean, it looks like the government is going to bail them out, but I mean, how do you, what the U.S. economy? So we're sitting here, we're in Philadelphia, we're right outside, we're in the greater Philadelphia market. What ramifications are we going to see here locally? Because I'm sure that's what a lot of people are asking right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely going to be a trickle down effect. I think there's going to be the supply chain issue. Definitely for U.S. companies that do a lot of business in China or are based in China, they're going to probably be some of the first to really see, a change there. But with a company of that size and with how large this is, I think we will 100% see a trickle down effect.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
There's definitely going to be impact. We have huge companies, John Deere, Mack Truck, Caterpillar. They export to China, and they have a lot of big construction equipment that we deal with, or that China has been buying. So yes, that supply chain could come to a screeching halt. And what's that going to do to our U.S. companies? So it's definitely going to affect. And my concern is that China's not always transparent about things.
You mean never transparent?
I'm trying to be nice, I guess. So this is just what we know from, from just little bits and pieces coming out. What is the real true? What's the real true essence of the problem that's happening there? Like, how can we get the real information to? I guess what's going to happen is we won't know until we know, right?
Well, that's exactly what a lot of the experts are saying. So, Rick Reeder, the chief investment officer at BlackRock, it's a global fixed, and he's the chief investment officer of global fixed income. He said that the hard thing about understanding China is that it's an opaque system, and oftentimes you don't have answers until you get answers.
Mm-hmm.
And because the banking system tends to be controlled by the government, um, there's a presumption here that government intervention is going to happen, and when you wrap that into everything else there, there's some very short-term financial questions about some of the other property entities. I mean, what about these other companies that are doing the same thing? And when that happens, I don't think it's going to create a financial crisis. It might more be there's going to be a lot of volatility in the markets, which the markets have done well. Even since the restrictions kind of lifted in May of last year, there's going to be a lot of caution and some hesitancy, and I'm clear the government's going to stabilize it because they have to. I mean, it's like a systemic company that's there, similar to Lehman. I mean, you saw the U.S. government had to get involved there, uh, but there could be what's going to happen here is like the liquidity issue and real estate being so important to the Chinese economy and the financial well-being of a lot of the families there. Home ownership's over 90% in China. And
Wow.
I mean that's a crazy number relative to the US where it's in like the 60 plus range, and they buy these apartments as an investment. So if it's not contained, I mean, it could really hurt the end user in a lot of ways. I mean, they're just blowing up these apartments now. I mean, literally, like they're demolishing them. So what I worry about is like what's going to happen with the consumption of other goods in the Chinese economy, and that could because look, the U.S. borrows a lot of money from China. I mean, this
Right.
could affect how the Fed adjusts its policy moving forward and what goes on with mortgage rates. So there's going to be some volatility here because it has been very stable. I mean, just look at mortgage rates, how stable they have been.
Mhm.
I don't know that that's going to be the case long term, and this might be the thing that pushes it over the edge.
Could be. Yes. And not only that, supply and demand, that's going to shift.
Uh huh.
If they're not going to be constructing these ghost cities anymore because they're basically insolvent, um, what becomes of supply and demand? Their supply is going to slow down. I mean, demand is going to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
They
Well, it
don't have
already
the demand.
has. I mean,
Right.
no one's moving in.
Right. But are they still constructing, or did they stop doing that?
I don't know the answer to that. So I
Okay.
mean, I would imagine they would have if they're
Hmm.
not paying their $84 million,
Right.
more loan payment coming up.
Hmm. So it could help in a strange way. It could help if if their demand stops, it could open up supply for other areas in a strange way.
So what if you're a developer here, right, and you run into this problem? I mean, how do you think that plays out differently in the U.S.? Because to me, this is all about the banking system. This has nothing to do with this. If they were just a development company, they'd say, "Screw you guys, you can go bankrupt." It's because they have so much involved in the Chinese economy, where they're doing a little bit of everything. I just there's going to be supply chain issues. I think we're going to see some supply issues coming up, even worse than they are now. I mean, getting lumber the
Oh,
past year was a
right,
real problem, right?
right.
Think about heavy machinery,
Hmm.
and all that you mentioned a couple companies earlier. I, this is going to have an effect on the U.S. So if this happens here, I mean, I think this company just goes out of business. I mean, that's really my observation. I mean, do you guys think anything different, or if they weren't so invested, the government probably wouldn't be bailing them out?
I think if it were here, the company goes out of business. They just go under. Since it's in China and real estate is 30% of the GDP, it's huge. And the Chinese government is China. Like that's,
Yeah.
so basically this company is China. So it has no choice. It has no choice but to salvage this company. Um, because if not, then a third of their economy goes under. basically. So it's just going to have too great of, it's just too great of a fail for China. And China's very
Hmm.
proud, country. They don't want to fail in anything. So the government's definitely going to make sure that they salvage this and try to mitigate the losses as best they can. And that's why they're probably blowing up these buildings so that at least they don't have to keep them.
Well, the maintenance costs
Yeah,
alone.
exactly. Can't imagine. Yeah.
That's going to be a problem. So, I mean, Sarah, do you see any anything else that we need to be aware of here? Like, and then I guess we can talk about how this is going to affect the housing market, and take a quick break. Anything else you're seeing, or any other observations you have on this news? Because I think this means a lot more than just the Chinese government stepping in here. I mean, it just shows that even China, who the U.S. borrows a lot of money from, isn't. I mean, they're not immune to this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you had also mentioned, I mean, I think we're going to have to keep our eye on the stock market. I think it's going to show itself in a number of different areas, and to what extreme will probably depend on how quickly they bail it out, to what extent. And as Stacey kind of mentioned earlier, do we even have the full picture of really what is going on there? So, based off of the information that we have, and with the hopes that China does bail them out, we'll see a trickle down effect, but maybe it won't be as extreme as it could. But behind the curtains, who knows what other factors are in play that we're not even aware of that could potentially have a larger effect on us down the line.
Well, and you look at what happened a couple weeks ago, and I think that the thing that a lot of people are talking about is that, like, the financial contagion. And I hate even using the word contagion, given what we've lived
Right.
through the past, like, 19, 20 months, however the hell long it's been, is that, you're going to see effects in other markets. I mean, back on the 20th of September, um, major stocks dropped about 800 points in the Dow Jones because they equities and bonds issued by other developers with high leverage were sold off, and there was protests at the Evergrande offices across China. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that right. And so, there is a ripple effect here because China has been setting the tone for the economy globally. So, and they even triggered like a 10% sell off of Bitcoin, which was a little wild. So people tend to overreact here.
Mhm.
The government's going to bail them out. This is going to be like a stress test for the global economies, because this has such a big impact in so many ways. And I agree. There's going to be supply chain issues. We're going to see some volatility in the market. We're going to have to see how this plays out. I mean, hopefully they just stop overbuilding. I mean, this was like a self-inflicted problem, and I think that's the worst thing about this. And it's no different than these developers in Philadelphia. I mean, they had plans next to the Ben Franklin Bridge to build a waterfront high-rise. They were pre-selling properties, and the market collapsed in 2008, and they refunded all the deposits. There was developers in Philadelphia, in Old City, that built these condos. They sold like 3 out of like 15 in the building, and then the developer just left the country, and these people were stuck there. This was big news. So this company's so big, they just can't leave and never come back and go back to like their safe haven in the Middle East or wherever they're from, because that's what happened in Philadelphia. So, this is something that's got to get fixed. And, my hope is that they learn from this, and there is going to be an impact here. And I think everyone needs to be watching this pretty closely, because if the government doesn't step in, there's going to be a lot of problems.
There's going to be a lot of problems. And the other thing, too, to consider is we're not thinking about it. They're obviously going to slow down their construction. That's going to lay people off. And you talk about the
Great
high
point.
interest loans from employees that they haven't paid. So
now they've taken their savings, right?
right,
They're not paying them, and then they're going to might have to lay people off.
right. So it's just a huge disaster on the horizon. And regardless of whether they're bailed out or not, they're still going to have to slow their pace. So there's still going to be massive layoffs. It's going to affect their local economies.
Yeah, and it's just and we don't know what's going on. I think that's the
Right.
biggest problem, is
Yes.
that China is not transparent. They use the word opaque in the article here, and a lot of the news surrounding this. So this is going to mean more, and I think it's something we're going to have to monitor, because we're going to feel the effects here in the U.S. whether we like it or not.
Cool.
And the government's going to bail them out. I mean, I don't see how that would be the more shocking news if there's not a bailout.
True.
Then that's going to be a major problem. But it looks like the government's going to bail them out. So this is one to keep your eye on. If you're not following this story, it's really important to start looking at this stuff, especially if you got money in the markets. Or, I mean, there's a lot of people that are, but a lot of people have no idea this is even going on.
Right. I agree. I know that the average American probably has no clue that something like this is looming.
Well, it just shows how however, I mean, no one saw Lehman Brothers either, and that happened
Right.
real fast.
Yes.
So that's another great example of how these things can happen. And because China regulates everything themselves, they don't have those checks and balances like we do here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All right, so we're going to come back. We're going to take a quick break. Stop talking about the global international crisis here, and when we come back, we're going to go over a lawsuit in Florida right now over a $4.8 million transaction. Again, this is Toole Time Real Estate Radio. We're coming right back at you on WWDB 860 AM. The real estate market is red hot. Have you considered taking advantage?
Your phone call is on hold.
REMAX at 610-692-6976 or visit our website, tomtoole.com, to connect and take advantage of these market conditions.
When you're getting a mortgage, you shouldn't have to sacrifice great service just to get a great rate. At Mortgage America, we've been lending with this philosophy for over 35 years. We have access to great low rates without the complications and delays of big or online banks. We're a local Pennsylvania lender with loan officers that you can actually meet. As PHFA's #1 lender, we specialize in all residential mortgage programs, including first-time buyer programs and low down payment options. For your free pre-approval, call us at 610-439-8000 or apply online at mymortgageamerica.com.
Mortgage America's equal housing lender, NMLS 128501.
Buying a home or already own one? We can help. I am Kevin Hamill from Alliance's Insurance Agency. If you haven't reviewed your policies in the last 3 years, now's the time. New home buyers, there are a number of ways that we can help you get to that settlement table. Call us to find out more at 610-816-0043, extension 3, or visit our website, alliancesinsurance.com. Don't forget the S, it's for savings.
Have you considered a career in real estate?
13 seconds. Stand by.
Your income. Whether you have a license or not, call us today at 610-692-6976 or visit tomtoole.com. Join our team, the Tom Toole Sales Group at REMAX.
All right, stand by. We're coming back. Mics are hot.
Welcome back to Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. She's Stacey Mitchell, and we've got Sarah Tymon back 2 weeks in a row. Very exciting. Sarah, it's good to have you here. You're on the inaugural episode, which was very cool. So I'm glad we got the 3-man booth going, or 3-person booth, I should say. So
I don't take offense.
I'm glad you don't, or you probably wouldn't be on the show with me because that's not how we roll. So
That's right.
what I wanted to talk about now, I mean, this is a little alarming. And again, you can follow us on the live stream on Facebook and on YouTube. Just look for Tom Toole Sales Group. There is a lawsuit filed by the seller of a home in Sarasota, a buyer who didn't get the property, and it's located in Bird Key in Sarasota, Florida, in a $4.8 million transaction where what they allege in the lawsuit is that, and I'm just going to read right, and this isn't like the Herald Tribune, which is the local paper in Sarasota. So prominent real estate agent Roger Pentongill at Coldwell Banker, he's being sued right now for a home on Bird Key by the potential buyer and the seller. And that's kind of the alarming part. And this is in Broward County, where the buyer who lost out on the property accused the real estate agent of manipulating the sellers into choosing a buyer that the listing agent also represented. So it was a dual agency situation, if that's the right term in Florida. And he received both sides of the commission involving a $4.6 million property plus $200,000 for furniture, which, that's obviously a big number there. And what he says happened is that there was 2 offers that came in, and they weren't presented properly. The buyer ended up knocking on the seller's door and raising the offer. And now they're saying he manipulated it to get both sides of the transaction. The sellers are looking for $30,000 in damages plus a return of the commission. The buyer, they're just looking for damages at this point. What do you guys think about that? I mean, this is alarming. I mean, I've been saying there's going to be a buyer that sues some point. I didn't think it'd be something like this. So what do you guys think?
The fact that it's the buyer and the seller that are suing both, it's just a pretty wild situation. When I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, it's one of those situations where you think it could never happen and it happens. So, and you're dealing with a lot of money here. It's pretty interesting how it all came about. And the allegations. I'm just curious to see how this all shakes out, because the buyer is convinced of what happened to him. The seller's convinced of their loss. And then you have the agent in between that's, defending himself at this point, but he can't release any information, obviously, because it's still ongoing investigations. But one reason why I personally don't like dual agency,
Mm-hmm.
because of that. I don't know. I always feel uncomfortable trying to represent I'm 110% kind of person. So representing a party 110 and another the same, on the same transaction 110, it just doesn't work out well for me. But that's my personal feeling. Um, I can see where something like this could totally happen. There's a lot of money at stake. You have a listing agent that brings a buyer in also. The the allegations are he didn't present the other offer in full, in paper. He just verbally said what the offer was. So I could see how something like this could totally happen. So you have to, as an agent, you have to be totally upfront and transparent with everything. Everything has to be on paper or it doesn't exist. There's
Mm-hmm.
no verbal anything. Just you have to present to your sellers everything on paper, all the offers that come in, no matter what. That's rule number one if you're representing sellers.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a couple different things that come into play here. One, I absolutely agree with Stacey that if you are representing both sides of the transaction, the potential for it to get hairy is certainly there. So that's one factor of it. The other is I agree that everything really does need to be in writing. If you are a seller and you have a couple different offers coming in, if they're being verbally presented to you in different pieces at different times, it's hard for anybody to keep any of that straight. Um, the best way to do it really is to have a time that you review all of the offers if you have a couple in hand, to show, this is this offer, this is this offer, this is this offer. It's all in writing. This is what it is, so that you don't have room for confusion in there, and that everybody is on the same page and understands what an offer actually is. Now, if the seller came after the fact and then verbally upped their offer, if the if the buyer came, knocked on the door, and then upped their offer after a transaction has already gone through, I mean, that's kind of after the fact. But you have to assume that also everybody has the ability to talk to everyone these days. So, I mean,
Sure, yeah.
it should absolutely be, agent to agent is who is communicating, but everybody has Facebook. Everybody has the ability to Google people and find out different things. And no, they are not supposed to be talking. They're supposed to go through their agents, but you have to assume that people are human. They're going to kind of dig and find out. And if they felt like they were slighted in something, they may very well go and contact that person. So I guess always, make sure that you're operating above board and that there isn't anything that you wouldn't want the other side to find out,
Right.
stay honest.
I just had that situation happen. I was following up with a listing agent. We have a closing in a couple of weeks, and he informed me. He said, "Oh, did you know that your buyers and my sellers have been talking, and your buyers have been over to the house a few times?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." And he said, "I had no idea either until yesterday when my sellers told me." So that's to Sarah's point. Yes, everybody has Facebook or Instagram. You can track people down; they'll reach out. So you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. As long as you're transparent with everything, should be no issues.
Sure.
Well, and you bring up a couple good points. Dual agency, I mean, some agents like to do it. I intentionally do not practice dual agency for the same reasons you talked about, because it gets a little dicey and there's things that have to be clear there. Also, I know what we use at our firm and at our team is, hey, here's a summary of the offer, and it's in writing and it's emailed. So there is no question what's in that contract, because invariably when people go over the summary of the offer, they say, "Oh, I didn't know this was in there." And I said, "Well, why don't you check your email? I sent you 2 days ago," and they didn't read it. So it makes that conversation a lot easier. I don't know the details of this lawsuit, and I think it's tough to speculate. From what I've heard from some people that I know, like in that office and in that marketplace, is that the agent who's getting sued, he has got a great reputation. Now, that Doesn't mean he's not doing anything right or wrong, but you have to look at past performance. What I also understand is that the offer was adjusted after the buyer lost. And I don't know about you guys. I have seen this happen many times where buyers say, well, if I would have known that was the other offer, I would have paid more. Well, you don't get a second chance sometimes. And just because you want to go over there and knock on the door and get things done, I mean, it's very interesting how that happens. I mean, I've had sellers where they've just declined an offer and then the buyer writes a letter, drops it in their mailbox and says, your agent's doing everything wrong, blah, 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 blah. My sellers call me laughing and they say, hey, they tried to get their offer accepted and they threw you under the bus. Thanks for keeping us informed about everything. So this is what people will do because they don't care about realtors. Like, I mean, some of these buyers, they will do anything they can to get the house. And whether it's ethical, right or wrong, that's not what and this is just the world we live in, right? And so I think that it's really important to acknowledge that, number one. And from what I understand, there was a home inspection attached to the offer that lost versus no home inspection on the initial offer. And then what happened, and no one's talking about this, the agent they're suing, the buyer is suing, went out and found them another house in the same area. So it's nice that they're suing the guy, but they also, he said, hey, I'm sorry it didn't work out. Then they used him in the transaction to go buy something else. So I've got a little hard time with that. I mean,
at a much higher price.
At a much higher price. It's over. I think this home was 4.8 million. They bought something for like 6 plus. I've got a really hard time with that. Now, you can sue someone for whatever reason you want. I mean, I've had complaints filed against me that are totally unfounded that I've won. This is the world we're living in, and the point is, no one is talking about that part of the story. If they were so unhappy with him,
right? Why did they go back and use him again?
Where's the agent that wrote the offer that didn't get the house?
Right.
Where's that person? Maybe they didn't think they negotiated properly and they got rid of them, right? I mean, this is a real thing that no one is talking about. So despite whatever's going on here in the news, you got to look at people's actions and what actually happened. And, I again, the misstep here, in my view, if it really did happen, because they bought a home for $6.5 million afterwards.
Right.
And he found it. So, and then they're suing the guy for the difference in the price between the property that they sold him versus the property they would have paid at the 4.8 million. And it's just, it's crazy to me.
It's a strange situation. I can't wait to see how this pans out, though. I really want to know the whole truth.
Well, I feel for the agent because it looks like he tried to do the right thing. And it's, that this is what happens. And I think that's why, if you're a buyer, calling the listing agent is like calling your husband and wife's divorce attorney. You're in a divorce. You don't want your soon-to-be ex-husband or ex-wife representing both sides, right? So I think that's what buyers need to realize going into this. And secondly, if you're the agent, I'd be putting everything in writing. I mean, even if you have a phone call with somebody, send them an email afterwards so they know exactly what you said, because people have selective memories. It's unfortunate. It's what happens. And if you're a buyer or seller, I'd say, hey, I want to see everything in writing so I know what I'm looking at. Like, take the time you don't have to make these decisions really quick, especially on the purchase side. So I think there's a lot to be learned from this, and it's unfortunate the way it played out for the agent. If he only presented it verbally, I mean, that's an area where he can improve too.
But he has a really good reputation,
I agree.
as you said. And not only that, he's very experienced in doing dual agency. If it says that he has represented both buyer and seller in 22 transactions, and that's about 30% of his deals.
Yep.
So, he's very experienced at working that type of situation.
Right. Yeah. It's not like he has a great reputation, but had never done this type of deal before. This is the type of deal that he's often putting together and still has a very good reputation in the area. So,
yeah, I'm not saying it's, I mean, there's always, everyone can improve, right? And if it was presented verbally and, we deal in a very, kind of a much lower price point here because that's what Philadelphia is. These are waterfront properties. It's a little different. So if I was a seller, I'd want to see it all in writing. If I was a buyer, I'd put everything in writing. And this is the mistake a lot of buyers make.
Yes.
When you write up an offer, it's got to get presented. I mean, how many times have you guys been on the phone and you present an offer to your seller and they say, why are you even calling me with this? You had that happen before?
Oh, yeah.
I've been on a call with you where this happened, Sarah,
Yeah.
and helping you out. And we've talked about it as well. And it's because you have a fiduciary responsibility to present these things. If you just say, hey, it's a verbal and hey, I'll pay you $4.8 million for the property. You don't know the settlement date. You don't know the terms. You don't know the financing. And that's where a lot of buyers make the mistake of not putting things in writing. And maybe that's what happened here. I don't know. I mean, it's you have to present it, but without it being in paper and having the ability to sign it and sell your home, it's a much different situation.
But there's a lot of bad agents out there, Tom.
Agreed.
Right.
That's why we're on the show
That's
giving this
right.
advice to people because they need to hear it. Whether or not they
Got it.
use us, that's not the point.
Right.
Just don't make a mistake and get yourself into this situation. And
For sure.
obviously, the buyer who's suing him, it's clear to me they felt like they had a bad agent because then they used the guy that they're suing.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, that is the craziest part of this story to me is that he went out of their way, found him a home, and then they're still suing the guy anyway.
Right. Mm-hmm. I know. That's the interesting
wild, yeah.
twist.
I mean, it just feels like it's like sour grapes at this point. That they didn't get the one house, they paid more for another house, and obviously they felt the other home was worth the extra $1.5 million or whatever it is. So, I mean, I would imagine this lawsuit's going to get thrown out. We'll see what happens. I mean, so do you see more of this coming? Is this going to be the new trend? When a buyer loses out on a home,
Ooh.
are they going to start freaking out like this? Because
really
we've had some pretty
depends.
ticked off buyers lately. When they lose out for the fourth or fifth time, no fault of the agent. They just don't do what's necessary to get the property.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, this is obviously a super high dollar transaction. So, and I'm sure that maybe one is an attorney already, or you know what I mean. They might have a family lawyer or something. But I don't know if this is going to be the trendsetter. But you're right. A lot of buyers get really upset if they do lose out. They could, it could spark more lawsuits. But personally, I don't think it's going to be the trend where a lot of people are going to be so happy for losing out on homes, especially if agents practice, everything being presented in paper. You just have to do what you're supposed to be doing as an agent. You have to practice by all the rules. So as long as you're doing that, you're going to be fine. You're not going to have these problems. But if you try to skirt around situations, you're going to have problems.
Yeah, I mean, I would think in most cases for buyers, I mean, I know that people can try to sue people,
Yeah, you could sue someone
You
for.
can
I
sue
could. You
for
could sue me
anything.
right now because I looked at you the wrong way, Sarah.
Right. But I mean, if there's other offers that were, better offers, and that's why they lost out in the house. I mean, I don't know how far an individual would be able to make it in a transaction if their agent was doing what needed to be done in order to help their client to the best of their ability. Like I don't see how it would be able to play out and actually go the whole way through.
Yeah, and I mean it's expensive to litigate too, and to get an attorney
Yes.
involved, and it to me it's a waste of time if you can work it out yourself.
Mhm.
Again, I think that the clearest thing here is follow the process and go over the basics. Like when you're submitting an offer, put the offer in writing, follow the offer instructions, which I know is a foreign concept to a lot of realtors because if you want to hide something from a realtor, just put it in the MLS and they just won't pay attention. I mean that's just how it is. Follow the offer instructions, put the whole contract in writing, and force an answer. That way you've done everything you can do and you're protecting yourself as a buyer agent. What I also know is there's paperwork laws that got to be followed. So in Pennsylvania, we've got to provide a closing cost estimate every time an agreement of sale is signed. Same thing with a listing agreement. So make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do as an agent. When you cut corners, this is when you get in trouble. And when you've got an attorney or the real estate commission looking through your file, you want to make sure it's all buttoned up. And all the more reason to know what the laws are. To Stacey's point, make sure you're not one of those bad agents that are out there just trying to close deals, and follow all the paperwork and the communication, almost excessively. And if you feel like you're in a situation like this, or if you're practicing dual agency, you got to put everything in writing. I'd be emailing nonstop with that, even after the phone calls, just to make sure it's documented, it's proven, they know exactly what was said. Because anytime something's done verbally, I mean, I could have a conversation with Sarah right now, and I could say, "Hey, here's what's going on," and she says, "Well, Stacey, that's not what Tom told me."
Right.
Not that you would do that, but I mean that's what can happen, right? So it's got to be in writing, and I think that's the lesson here for a consumer and for an agent. If you want to cover yourself, make sure you're backing up your communication in these transactions in writing, because that way there's no room for misinterpretation.
I agree wholeheartedly.
All right. So what we're going to do on that note, we got Inman superstar author coming on next, Jimmy Burgess. And if you want to make sure you know how to put stuff in writing and present offers properly, and you're thinking about getting into real estate, it's a great opportunity to connect with our team. We have a real estate scholarship. If you're thinking about getting licensed, it's realestatescholarshipprogram.com. But enough of that. We got Jimmy Burgess coming on, Inman All-Star. Jimmy, we're looking forward to chatting with you next on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.
Buying a home or already own one? We can help. I am Kevin Hamill from Alliances Insurance Agency. If you haven't reviewed your policies in the last 3 years, now's the time. New home buyers, there are a number of ways that we can help you get to that settlement table. Call us to find out more at 610-816-0043, extension 3, or visit our website, alliancesinsurance.com. Don't forget the S, it's for savings.
Have you considered a career in real estate? Do you want control over your income? Whether you have a license or not, call us today at 610-692-6976 or visit tomtoole.com. Join our team, the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Main Line.
When you're getting a mortgage, you shouldn't have to sacrifice great service just to get a great rate. At Mortgage America, we've been lending with this philosophy for over 35 years. We have access to great low rates without the complications and delays of big or online banks. We're a local Pennsylvania lender with loan officers that you can actually meet. As PHFA's #1 lender, we specialize in all residential mortgage programs, including first-time buyer programs and low down payment options. For your free pre-approval, call us at 610-439-8000 or apply online at mymortgageamerica.com.
Mortgage America's equal housing lender, NMLS 1285001.
The real estate market is red hot. Have you considered taking
Stand by 10 seconds.
Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX at 610-692-6976 or visit our website, tomtoole.com, to connect and take advantage of these market conditions.
All right. We are back on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. Just search Tom Toole Sales Group. I'm Tom Toole. She's Sarah Tymon. She's Stacey Mitchell. And we have mega star agent, influencer, good friend, Inman article, Jimmy Burgess on. Jimmy, super grateful to be seeing you here. And we were just talking about your state. So you haven't met Stacey and Sarah yet, but they've got a lot of great questions for you. So Jimmy is the authority on real estate, and what you should follow him on is Inman. So talk a little bit about like what you're doing with your Inman stuff right now, because if you don't know Inman News, it's like the real estate news spot to go to. And Jimmy's putting out like 4 or 5 articles a week, and he had like 6 of the top 10 articles rated in the month of August.
Listen, Tom, before I even get started, man, what a privilege to be with you, my friend. It's been too long. I know we're going to get together in a couple of weeks, but just appreciate you're doing. I'll tell you, the whole idea behind what I do with Inman really is a lot of what you guys are doing right here as far as just giving back to the business that's been so good to us. I run a company that we've got about 250 agents and do about $2 billion worth of annual sales. And so it started out where I was just educating our agents through video. And then actually what we did is we began sending that out to agents in our community, understanding that we're all better together. And just like what you were talking about in the previous segment, when we talk about these things in advance and we build these relationships with the other agents in a way, we're all better. And so it started out that way. And then after doing that, basically I had someone said, hey, you should do a podcast. So we started the Real Estate Sales Podcast. And basically all that was the audio from those videos. And then actually I'd written a couple of articles years and years ago for Inman, just one-off. And then I just had happened to run into the editor for Inman, who had been a friend of mine since back then. And she said, hey, maybe you should do some articles again. And I did one, and she said, hey, could you do it weekly? And so it basically just turned into something now where I'm doing 2 a week. And then I'm loving it. I mean, Tom, it gives us the ability, really. Somebody did it for us when we were starting.
100%.
Somebody helped us get to these levels. And so I think the best way to honor all those people that spent so much time with being patient with me was to share some of the knowledge. Not that I got all the information, but after 27 years, well over half my life, all of a sudden now, maybe if I can share some things in a way that people can avoid some of the mistakes that I made, that hopefully it helps everybody do a little bit better.
Love that. And when you give back, I mean, you always get more than you give, but when you give back, it does make a difference. And that's something that obviously we're big on here with our organization, and we run in some of the same circles that we're surrounded by a lot of great professionals that do that. So Jimmy is the Chief Growth Officer at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Beach Properties of Florida. At this place, I haven't been to this place, but it's called 39A, and it's apparently like the best
30A.
beach. 30A. See, I don't even know what I'm talking about. So
I know.
tell us a little bit about like where you're from and maybe your career to this point, because it's great. Like, hey, now He's this big Inman article. He's got 250 agents. He's the chief growth officer. But how did it start? Because that's getting started to me is the toughest thing in this business.
So, Tom, I was kind of born into this business. My parents got a divorce when I was a teenager. My dad moved about 45 minutes away. My dad opened a real estate company, and so did my mom. And so, literally, I was kind of born into this business. So, after going to college, starting out with Merrill Lynch, I'm in a coastal market. You can see, this is not a coat and tie kind of area where I'm at. And so, after a year of being in the corporate environment with Berkshire Hathaway, all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute. My brother was coming back to help my mom kind of grow her company. And so I left Merrill Lynch, came into the real estate business basically at 23 years old, and just started realizing all of a sudden, wait a minute, there may be something here. And this was back, we were old school back in the day in this little small rural market. I'm literally, as I'm here, I'm about 25 miles from the dirt road I grew up on, and there was nothing at this beach back then, And so I started out really selling first-time home buyers, selling a lot of, rural development type loans, VA loans, FHA loans, and then all of a sudden our market grew around us down to the beach, and that's where I ended up down here. But humble beginnings. We had my mom as the broker, my stepdad worked there, and we had 3 additional agents besides my brother and myself. And I remember we had an article back in the 90s, and it was one of these like 30 under 30 for the state of Florida. And they're young, they're savvy, and they're in it for the long run. And it was like me with this full head of hair, so naive, you know what I mean? Had done like 107 transactions, and our total sales volume was like $8 million.
Wow.
It was like our average sales price was so ridiculously low. And now to see what's happened down here in our marketplace, what we've seen as far as the growth in our area, one way to make this, listen, I've been doing this long enough, and I know you have too. This market sometimes will make you look better than you are, which is doing for a lot of us right now. But it will just as quickly make you look as bad as you are. So I went through the booms of selling real estate in the early 2000s and the boom of the real estate market up in 2004, making $1 million a year. And then, Tom, I'm sitting there literally 3 years later after making some dumb decisions, obviously, and I'm sitting in bankruptcy court with $500 in my name.
Wow.
And so we're at a place right now, which is, and so you go through that and you come back and you bounce back and you go through all the hardships. And there's a part of me that is just so passionate about making sure that other agents realize that I don't know what this market's going to do, but this too shall pass. It may get better. It may pull back some. It may get very difficult. It may get extremely easy. But I do know that change is coming one way or the other. And so what I'm trying to do now is just spread that information that I wish I'd had more of when I was at that point. Because, we're in the greatest business in the world. This is literally, we're sitting at a place right now. These are the good old days. If you're a buyer, if you're a seller, these are the good old days. If you're an agent, these are the good old days. Opportunity is abounding all around us. So now it's just a matter of just getting out there and doing some of those things. I kind of went on a long route of how I got here, but I'm just so thankful for all of it now. Looking in hindsight, probably the best thing that ever happened to me was going through all those struggles, because now I appreciate the things we have, and it's given me a passion for other agents too.
I think it's super critical to be grateful what you went through, because I was through 9/11, right? We were through the 2008 crisis. Sarah and Stacey, Stacey joined the team and signed her paperwork in the middle of the shutdown, and Sarah joined like 2 months before. So for these two especially, what perspective do you have, having been in the business a couple years now? Because Jimmy's been through the same thing, and maybe do you have any questions for him, how he adjusted when the market normalized a bit, because you're talking about one of the most incredible times over the past 18, 24 months.
Well, Jimmy, you had mentioned that during the 2008 crisis, you found yourself in bankruptcy court with, what was it, $500 in your pocket or something?
That was it.
Yeah,
Yes.
bad times for a lot of people. So how did you find your way out of that? And I have another question too. I'm sorry. But you said that when your parents divorced, your mom started, she got into real estate, and then your dad got into real estate. Whatever happened with your father's real estate career?
So interesting, because my dad actually, he grew a company back then. You got to understand, I think he sold the company in like 1988 or so, 90. And basically he had grown that to over 120 agents. And this is back when there weren't that many big, larger companies. And the lady that he sold it to is still actually in this area. She's about 45 minutes to an hour. And I actually talked to her last week. And she owns the ERA franchise over there. And she tells the story of coming in there with my dad and thinking, how in the world is this guy, you know, with all not, I mean, he came in with, you know, with literally with shorts and boat shoes on. And she's like, what in the world? And so when I saw her, she tells the story of, I was like, I'm negotiating with a guy that doesn't have socks on. And so literally when I ran into her at an awards banquet a couple of years ago for this, I walked up and I was like, hey, just so you know, I got socks on. So I'm taking this next generation thing to the next level. But literally, that was kind of what happened with his company. You know, it was a situation where literally by the time I got out of college, he was back out of real estate and was in developing properties at that time. So it was a natural for me to be with my mom. And also probably such a gift. I mean, I think it's so critical to have somebody that's mentoring you. And literally to have my mom, you know, a couple of offices away there for the first 3 years of my real estate career was incredible. You know, to have that where I felt comfortable asking anything, and to know that she was going to shoot me straight and tell me when I was extremely wrong and tell me when I was doing things right. So, but as far as getting on the, you know, bouncing back after that, this was one of those things where I think it was just like, I mean, I'll be honest, I sat in it for a couple of years. You know, I sat in that thing, you know, and that doesn't happen overnight. You know, this thing unwinds, it takes time. I literally had some health issues. It doesn't just affect your finances, it affects your relationships and everything else. And I literally went through a health scare and basically hit bottom where I lost my voice for 2 months. You got to understand, my voice is all I got. I mean, I'm just
we can tell.
All I've got is my voice. I know, right? And so literally, I go through that process. I end up in Vanderbilt Voice Clinic up in Nashville, and they tell me they find a mass in my throat at 35 years old. And I'm sitting there going, man, what in the world is going on here? And just really got to focus on what was truly important. Realized my wife, after we went through all of this, I mean, she really meant it when she said better, worse, rich, or poor, you know, good health and, you know, sickness and health. And so all of a sudden I got a new passion for making sure that I was going to be the husband I was created to be, the father I was created to be, and the agent that I was created to be. And so after coming through all of that, I just really got focused back on what was important, which to that point, to be perfectly frank, I was so driven by transactions of next, that all of a sudden I began to focus on relationships and actually going deeper with the people that I'd done business with. And they took me wide. They took our business wide from there as we began to focus really on those folks that had been good to us and really focusing on who are those best people that you're working with, that ideal client, and spending more time with them because they were the ones that actually referred us to people that we wanted to work with. And so those are some of the things we did. It doesn't happen overnight, obviously, but we did once it, and a lot of times it happens up here mentally before you see it out there. But that's what really worked for us as we came out of it.
That's great. Love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, and I think that you're right on there where sometimes taking a step back and kind of evaluating and balancing out your life a little bit more actually makes you a better agent and a more productive agent than just grinding solely on transaction. It's almost like you need that little bit of perspective and to really, like you had said, just being grateful and stepping back and seeing the full picture helps you in each aspect. So I feel like that's very true.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'll say this: don't ever doubt though, Tom, because you know me well enough to know this, and I know you too. There ain't nothing wrong with grinding. I mean, I get after it. You know what I mean? It didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't lose that fire for working hard. What I did though find is I found that there was a balance there that I'd never had before. And so as we did that, I'm just joking. I tell all of our agents, I was like, listen, if you really want to do this, I'll tell you how I got the success that I had. And it was something where I had to learn how to work smart and be diligent. This is what I really love about my friend Tom, is how diligent he is in his schedule and how disciplined he is in every area of his life. But for me, I had somebody when I was really young say, listen, I mean, you may not be the smartest one, but if you'll work harder than anybody else, good things are going to happen. And so literally to this day, I had a group of my kind of group that I kind of keep in touch with, they're mutual friends with Tom and I. And I took a video of me unlocking the doors into the office this morning early, you know, and I'll do that every so often because I used to say that I called it the unlock your success principle. If you'll unlock or lock the doors at least one time a day in your office, and you're literally working while you're there, and you're focused on doing the things that move your business to the next level, good things are going to happen too.
Unlock the door. That's we should all write that down here. That's a good one. I feel like team meeting coming up here. So we got like 3 minutes left here, Brett. So anything else, Jimmy? Like, where can people follow you? What should they know about you? And tell us in maybe, because we were short on time, What's going to happen in the market in 2022? I'd love to get your perspective on that because, it is different everywhere. And then we can kind of wrap this up.
Yeah, I think obviously I think I mentioned a little bit earlier that it's a really good time for both buyers and sellers right now. The numbers still make sense. If you're someone that's been renting, you can buy a very comparable house for less than what you're going to pay in rent. You've got historically low rates, which means the affordability as far as your monthly payment. I always tell people, if you're looking at price is a one-time event, obviously when you're purchasing. That mortgage payment, which is based on that interest rate, it's an ongoing deal. So if you're buying a house, which hopefully most people are for an extended period of time, not know there's no one out there flipping something. If they're looking from a standpoint of buying their personal residence over a 5, 7, 10-year period they're going to keep, making sure that you take advantage of these low interest rates really makes a lot of sense right now. So we're really focusing on trying to help the buyers from that perspective of them understanding exactly where we are in the cycle. And nobody knows where the prices are going. What I would say is there's so much demand out there, and we've got a 10-year lag of new construction that is just going to take years for us to work out to get back to a place where we've got some type of semblance of a normal type of inventory situation. So I would continue to think that prices are going to go up in the spring and in the into this next year. I think we may see a cooling down of the amount. We may go from double digits to single digit gains over the next 18 months. But I think we're going to see that. As far as from a seller's perspective, I mean, my gosh, if you're thinking about selling in the next few years and you want to take all of the question marks off the table and want to sell into strength, in my career, there's never been a time you can sell into as much strength as possible. One of the things that we're watching, though, is obviously the average days on market continuing to creep up in most markets. We're also beginning to see where people are giving 10 offers, now they're getting 3 to 4, or maybe 1 or 2. So as those things, if you're looking as far as the seller on where is the trend is obviously moving back towards normalcy. So if you feel like you may have wanted to sell in the next couple of years, now might be a great time. Everybody's situation is different, but now might be a great time to really dive deep with like Tom or somebody on the team, and just make sure that you're at a place where you're identifying when it's best for you, but you've never had an opportunity to sell in the strength that you do now. So I'm very positive on both sides. I think what we're seeing right now is prices have gone up. It has taken some of the demand out of the market, which we needed, to be perfectly frank, to get to a place where we could see some normalcy. So pretty exciting time. I don't know what you're seeing, Tom, but I mean, for us and everybody talking around the country, this is an exciting time to be in this business, and really it doesn't matter which part of the business you're in right now, there's opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and the one thing where we're going to differ is that we don't have a lot of new construction here. Besides that, everything else is spot on, and there is a lot of opportunity. And I think the people that don't take advantage now, they're either going to have a higher payment down the line if they're a buyer, or the sellers might miss the market. I mean, they might not get that like super clean, non-contingent, aggressively above asking price sales. So where can we connect with you, Jimmy? Again, we got Jimmy Burgess on here, the Chief Growth Officer at Berkshire Hathaway down in Florida. How do people connect with you? What's I know you got your YouTube channel going. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, if you just go to YouTube and look up Jimmy Burgess, I think we've got over 200 videos now that are just agent tips, interviews, which obviously I got to get back with you, Tom, about maybe next week, getting with you. And then also the Real Estate Sales Podcast is another 100 episodes where we're just giving tips and strategies for agents to help them serve their clients better. And I'm pretty easy to find. You can just Google me. You should be able to find me there.
Yeah, it's Jimmy Burgess, JimmyBurgess. Jimmy, my man, appreciate you coming on. This is like the world famous Inman contributor, good friend, great agent, and a great resource for real estate. So that's going to be it for this week. You want to connect with Jimmy, again, search him on YouTube. Stacey is on Instagram at @2 Mitch, MITCHCO. Sarah is at Time. I screwed this up, at TY_TYTIME on Instagram, Ty_Ty Time. There we go. Follow me at Tom Toole 3RD on Instagram. Find the team on Facebook, Tom Toole Sales Group. And you can also watch our stream on Facebook and YouTube. This is Toole Time, Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.
All right, you want to talk to him before he hangs up, unless he's hung up by now?
I'm still here.
Jimmy, you there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, brother, thanks, man. That rocked. That was great.
I hope it was okay. I kind of went a different direction. I was planning with some of that personal stuff, but I hope that was okay.
I think that's the best stuff, man. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, I thought it was really you had the story, which was cool. Market predictions, talked about what you're doing on it. I mean, we hit a lot in the 20 some minutes we had. I thought it rocked.
Okay, great. Well, tell Stacey and Sarah I said appreciate seeing them too. And listen, you're going to be up there. When are you getting into town?
I'm not going to be at Kiowa. I got to go to the summit next week.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, all right. Well, I'll tell you what. You'll be in summit next week. Then I'll send you some options for a couple.
Yeah,
weeks
just shoot
from
me
now,
a text. Yeah, and then we
okay?
can just jump on for sure, brother.
Okay, man. Appreciate
Hey.
you more than you know. Okay.
Yeah, so it goes both ways here. Thanks, man.
All right, man.
Okay.